Thank you, Hugh Hewitt. This is Kurt Schlichter. I am here in the control booth of the Relief Factor studio in beautiful Southern California. It is Dark 30, not Zero Dark 30, okay? Great title for a movie, but not what we said in the Army. I am, in fact, a retired United States Army colonel. I'm also a noted Los Angeles trial lawyer. I am the senior columnist at townhall.com, where I write every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and I have a column out today. If you are a Town Hall VIP, and if you are a Town Hall VIP, and you should be a Town Hall VIP, you are also able to get my podcast, which is not safe for work, and my Friday 10 to 15 minute video rant, The Stream of Courteousness, which well, sometimes I work a little blue. I'm also the author of the Kelly Turnbull series of conservative action novels. The new one is The Split. It's number 6 in the series that began with People's Republic. You're going to want to go get all those books because, as my friend Andrew Breitbart, who sucked me back into conservative writing in the late aughts, once said, politics is downstream from culture. So go upstream. Be like a salmon. Swim against the flow. Get The Split. Support conservative authors. Or shut up about all the woke garbage you see on Netflix. By the way, do you see what the guy who owns Netflix is doing? He has intervened in the California recall race, folks. As you know, Governor Hairstyle is running to save his useless hide. Because Californians are tired. They're tired of hobos. They're tired of crime. They are tired of mask mandates. Will we be talking about the mask mandates? Oh, yes, we're going to talk about the mask mandates. But did you know, according to the multi-zillionaire who owns Netflix and is paying for the ads, the recall effort is the result of conservative media. It's you people, you unsatisfied, uppity peasants. Oh, the peasants are revolting. They stink on ice, says Mel Brooks. By the way, Mel Brooks served in the Army as an engineer in World War II. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. There's a little trivia for you. Yesterday. All my troubles seem so far away. I was emotionally shattered yesterday as the moist, lachrymose members of Congress let the tears fall. You know, it's important to cry when you're slightly upset. And I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional here. There was a minor fracas and some people were mean to me. Oh, God, shut up! Have some freaking dignity. Adam Kinzinger, you know, he's sitting there. He's tearing up because this is it's a democracy. He's sitting there tearing up, and I'm looking at this guy who's a KC-130 pilot. And I'm looking at him going, all I can think of as he's like blubbering, right, is thank God he's not Army. I'm like texting my Air Force buddies. I'm like, he's all yours, baby. Hit send. Oh, and the cops. We're going to talk about that more as we go on. But I don't think the kangaroo court, the circus, the festival of foolishness that is the January 6th Commission is the major story. The major story is, of course, the CDC's 180 about masks. And okay. First, it's you shouldn't wear a mask. Then it's you gotta wear a mask. Then it's you gotta wear 2 masks. Then it's now you don't have to wear a mask. And yesterday it became you gotta wear a mask again, even if you're vaccinated. Okay, if I convened a council of renowned dummies to think of a way to convince people not to take the vaccine, I don't think they could come up with a better plan than what these morons are doing in Washington. well, we have to defer to what the CDC says. No, you don't! The CDC is an advisor. Joe Biden is allegedly the commander-in-chief. Now, when I was commanding a cavalry squadron, when I was acting commander at a brigade, I had a large staff. Okay? I had personnel folks, intelligence folks, operations folks, logistics folks, signal folks. I think I had a veterinarian. I had a bunch of people with expertise. I even had lawyers. Did they make decisions? No. The commander made decisions. There's one person in the executive branch who's elected. Well, actually, there's two. The president and vice president. They are the ones elected. They should be making the decisions. You don't subcontract out decision making. You subcontract out staff work and implementation, but not decision making. The CDC's proper role is an advisor. And properly constituted, a competent CDC, which we manifestly do not have, adds its input. You know, we've done a lot of studies, and we see that masking will, according to these studies, which we've reviewed carefully, will cut transmission of the virus by 42%. Okay, that's important information, says Joe Biden, because you know he's on top of stuff. You know, his shawl's over there on the rocker, the bowl of gruel is getting cold. Murder, She Wrote's on the DVR. He's in action. He's in decision-making mode. Then he goes, okay, economists, guys, what's the effect on the economy of a mass mandate? Hey, education guy, I want to know what's the effect on kids. He gathers information from everybody. And then he makes a decision because he sees all the implications, and he is the one who's accountable. Instead, it's like, well, the CDC says. The CDC has a small sliver of the pie. That's not how you make decisions. Okay, and that's leaving aside, that's manifestly a bad decision. You want people to take the vaccine. I had the disease. Okay, I consulted with conservative doctors. I applied the facts of my life and my situation, including people around me, and their health, and my conservative doctors working with me decided that, yes, it makes sense for me to take the vaccine. I didn't just listen to the doctors. I listened to a number of people because I am my own commander-in-chief, as you are your own commander-in-chief. I didn't outsource decision-making. I took their advice, and I came to the decision to take the vaccine. And I took it. I felt slightly tired. And I've had no other effects. I have a prehensile tail, as I've mentioned before. The good part is now I can hold 3 beers, and or alternately 2 beers and hang from a rafter. But I've been quite happy with how it's gone, and I have not got COVID again that I know of. So I made that decision based on my factors. You should make it on your factors. You know your factors. You are your own commander-in-chief. You should seek advice from people you trust. Look at all the factors and then decide whether you're getting it or not. I encourage people to do it if it's the right choice for them. And I think, and if you came to me and said, Kurt, what is your advice? Well, I can tell you my story. Worked out great for me. I would love to see you immune from it. The disease is a pain. It was annoying. For me, it was like a slight cold. Now, Irina, it was kind of a major flu, and what made it even better was I gave it to her because I got it working for Rick Grinnell, who did not get it, in Nevada for the president. So that was a little present I brought home from Las Vegas. That was smart because my wife's Cuban, and usually I try not to make any sudden moves around a woman who once told me I don't have enough guns. Guys, by any reasonable measure, I've got enough guns. But guns aren't one of those things that you measure reasonably. Not if you're a man. And if you're a man, you don't cry in front of other people. Holy cow, do I have to really say that? So, what do we got? We got idiots running our government. We got sissies whining on Capitol Hill and thinking that they did great. They were like walking out, this really worked out well. Yes, it did. When I cried, lots of normal Americans thought it was great. And we also have this Simone Biles woman. and I know nothing about it. So I'm going to do something revolutionary, folks. I am not going to have an opinion about her. I don't know anything about sports ball, so I'm going to shut the heck up about her, but not about other stuff. This is the Hugh Hewitt radio program. We got a great show today. I want you to stick around. I'm still trying to get my mind around this mask stuff. So I need a voice of calm, a voice of sanity, a voice of reason. So naturally, I reached out for my pal, Jim Garrity of National Review and the Morning Jolt. Jim, bring me down to earth.
Kurt, I know you're looking for some soft, melodious tones. But
we got to give the backstory.
Yeah. But you're not going to get them today because
What?
I'm pretty irate and fired up about this. I'm in the process of writing the Morning Jolt as we speak.
So we got mad Jim today.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. I'm vaccinated. I think everybody else out there should get vaccinated. But if you've chosen not to, I went and I looked it up, because the year kind of flies by. People easily forget. Everyone has been eligible since April 19th. Teenagers have been eligible since May 10th. If you've chosen not to get, it's in every drugstore. It's free. Ohio was running the lottery. If you've chosen to not get vaccinated by now, that's your choice, and it's a free country. I do not like the idea.
Sort of.
I think if you're in, fair point. I do not like this idea, and you're seeing more and more people kind of openly discuss this. Like, well, the vaccine should be mandated. It should not just be required.
Oh, it ain't mandating nothing.
Yeah. You can't see the problems of the government injecting something in you that you don't want. I'm not even that much of a libertarian, but that part I can see. Okay, that's the sort of thing.
That's the line in the sand when they're sticking a needle in you. Yeah, Jim Garrity. I absolutely agree. Now I have taken the vaccine too. My body surges with powerful antibodies because I actually had the disease. Then I consulted with conservative doctors. I looked at all the factors involved in my life, including the people around me and their conditions, and I chose to get the vaccine. It made me slightly tired. I do have a prehensile tail. We've discussed that before. It's very useful. Like I said, I can now have handle 3 beers at a time, or hang from a rafter and have 2 beers. But look, I have no desire to go tell other people what they need to do. There are a number of factors at issue.
If you're vaccinated, the Delta variant, at most, you could get. First of all, yes, the vaccine does not prevent infections; it prevents serious illness, and that's what we're really afraid of. We didn't shut down society every winter because of the flu, right? We shut down society in COVID-19 because it was something new. Like, oh my God, particularly if you're older, particularly if you're immunocompromised, this thing could kill you. Although if you're young and healthy, you had a really good chance of pulling through just fine, and you may not even have.
Well, it's better than a really good chance. It's statistically infinitesimal. Have you noticed that, Jim Garrity, that America has a huge problem managing risk?
No, this entire pandemic has been a 18-month, going on 2-year illustration of this. And what's most frustrating about the CDC ruling yesterday is that by asking people who are fully vaccinated to mask up.
Well, I wish they were just asking.
Yeah, well, okay.
And I have an answer for them.
Giving the justification for local governments and state governments and employers and all that other stuff to require people to wear masks to protect the unvaccinated. First of all, they're punishing the responsible in order to take care of the irresponsible. Yeah,
that's my thing. Now, let me get this straight. You chose not to get vaccinated, so I got to throw a thong around my pie hole. Is that how this works? Because that doesn't work for me.
And in the end, you can see it. We've seen this dynamic at work throughout the whole series of the pandemic. There is a chunk of of Americans who are effectively neurotic. They look for things to worry about. They find things to worry about.
Yes, and vote for Joe Biden.
I'm not surprised that you don't see a lot of virologists who like to skydive on the weekends. I'm not surprised that people who are epidemiologists don't like to rock climb without ropes. Got it. Fine. Okay, these are not people who embrace a risk because they spend their time looking under microscopes at things that can kill them. Got it. Okay, fine. Other people are going to have different levels of risk tolerance, and part of the idea of this country is, you know what? As long as you're not harming somebody else, as long as what you're doing isn't inflicting physical or some other harm on other people, you go and live your life. And if you want to do stuff that's risky, fine. Know those risks and accept those risks. And what they're doing now is basically, first of all, the idea. I cannot believe that we're at the same time we're trying to tell Americans, go out and get vaccinated. We're trying to tell teenagers, go out and get vaccinated. You're now eligible after 12 and older. And we're going to say, oh, by the way, every kid in schools has got to be wearing a mask whether or not they're vaccinated. What signal does that tell you? This is the bizarre situation that the people who worry the most about COVID-19 and the anti-vaxxers in this situation are in the same message, which is that the vaccines aren't really effective enough and it doesn't work well enough, and that there are people from the beginning of this pandemic, or I should say, from the moment March 2020, people who have basically had this sense of dread in their bones, their entire lives. They felt pretty vindicated in March 2020. They felt good.
Yeah,
finally, I've been proven right after all this time, and they want to go back to that.
This is the Woodstock for a lot of people, Jim Garrity. This is the most exciting thing that they've ever been a part of. Okay, look, I deployed to Desert Storm. I ran a heavily armed car wash, but I was still there. And there's a feeling when you have something. It's got a little bit of danger. It's got a lot of novelty. It's something you're going to remember the rest of your life. It's some people are going to talk about. Most Americans never have that. For a lot of them, it's this. This is the time, and they want it at some level. They love the idea of lockdowns. They love the idea of masks because it fills their empty lives with some kind of meaning. And I'm sick of having to live, with the consequences of these freaks' personal psychodramas.
Well, again, we all went through it. We all lived through it. And if it gave you that sense of shared mission, that sense of fine, great, wonderful. But we're all back. Most of us are vaccinated now. We can now go back to normal life. And if you love staying at home, and not seeing your relatives and not seeing your family and loved ones and friends and all that kind of stuff and ordering takeout and streaming everything on Netflix, that's great. I got a life to lead over here.
Yeah.
I'm back to normal life because I was pretty happy with things before, March 2020 kicked in.
Well, look, I don't feel I should have to conform my existence to the convenience of a bunch of lonely shut-ins.
Yeah, and it's been really fascinating to watch the people who freaked out as they opened up society very gradually this past year, generally pretty safely. And, I guess it was probably March, April. I was down in Hilton Head, crossed over to Savannah. Stores were full of people, some people masked, some people not. And if there was going to be this massive breakout of cases, okay, that's when you'd see it. People were back to their normal habits again, and it didn't happen. There were no giant mass deaths and all that kind of stuff.
Well, look, it didn't help when the leftists decided to take to the streets for their mostly peaceful riots, and we were informed by all the smart people who we should trust unequivocally because science, that it's actually okay and, in fact, important that they get out there and mix and mingle. You can't go to church, but you can go out in the street and burn stuff because of racism.
Way to go. In my personal favorite example of that, Kurt, is the guy who dressed up, the lunatic lawyer down in Florida, who dressed up as the Grim Reaper, because he wanted to warn people that going to the beach and being outside in sunshine and strong winds was they were risking their lives of COVID-19. Now, with further, we now know going outside, that's like the safest place you could have been. And the coverage of this guy was so credulous and was so this is clearly a guy who's way off his rocker. And if he dressed up like the San Diego Chicken and decided to tell people,
which would be more dignified.
Well, yeah. And if he had done that and he tried to say that eating rutabaga will kill you, and he went around a restaurant, people be like, wow, this guy needs to be in a rubber room and taken away in a straitjacket. But because he was doing that in the seat service, wow, it's
an important visionary.
Of the risks, no.
Well, let's talk about the political fallout of this, because we have seen the revolt of the governors yesterday as Republican governors have said, we're not doing any of that. led by Ron DeSantis, who seems to be dragging the kind of squish governors, kicking and screaming behind him towards freedom. But no, the Republican governors are going, yeah, there's no science behind that, so we're not doing any of it. So we're getting a real clear breakdown. The blue states, here Governor Hairstyle's going to go all in for facial fascism. But, if you go to a free state, and I'm going to Texas this weekend, I'm not going to wear a mask, from the second I get off the aircraft. What do you think politically this means? Do you think after this, whiplash of changing, we promise you won't have to wear a mask if you get vaccinated. I got vaccinated. Wear a mask anyway. How do you think that's going to affect the midterms?
Well, the first lesson of the last 18 months is that the imposition of strict rules in a particular state greatly increases the chances that you will see one of the office holders violating those rules.
Yes.
Most famously, Newsom at the French Laundry, but there's plenty of examples of this. And my governor, Governor Blackface here in Virginia. I'm sorry.
Wait, was he the blackface guy or the Klan guy? I just never. Has that been ever cleared up?
On the pandemic, Northam hasn't been that bad. He's always been very consistent, saying people should always wear a hood. Mask. Hood, mask. Always be covering your face. Shoe polish, something like that. Something should be on your face. Yeah.
Always be cross-burning.
Yes, there you go.
Glenn Northam.
Kurt, he doesn't do that anymore because of the carbon emissions.
Exactly. That's the line.
The more you impose these rules, the more likely it is you're going to see more examples of this. And
do we see a wave election for Republicans next year, Jim Garrity?
It's building. Looking in that direction, Kurt.
I'm loving it. Thank you, Jim Garrity from National Review. Go read the Morning Jolt every morning and stick around with us. We're back on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I am guest host Kurt Schlichter. And that bumper music is Motorhead. And when you think of Motorhead, you immediately think of Roger Kimball, the editor of the New Criterion, at Roger Kimball on Twitter. Roger, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt program.
Good to be with you, Kurt.
Good to have you. I kind of want to take a 30.
I love that introduction.
You love that, right? I know you wanted to hear Ace of Spades, but I like the David Bowie cover. It's nice. Yeah. I think of you as the Lemmy Kilmister of conservatism. Which okay, so in any case, Roger, let's take a 30,000-foot view of what's going on. You're a cultural commentator. I've read your stuff for decades, and you have a very incisive view of what the heck's going on. How is this pandemic and the panic that's ensued from it, how's that going to change our society? And gosh, can we ever change back?
Well, that's a very good question. People have pointed out that pandemic is the word panic along with the word Dem, or Democrat. And
whoa,
I think there's something to that. This is a seasonal respiratory virus. It can be serious for a very tiny part of the population. One has to exercise certain precautions and so on. But there's no doubt, at least in my mind, that this has been used and abused by governments across the world as a kind of exercise in social control. Imagine a few years ago if someone told you that the CDC or Governor Cuomo or whoever or St. Anthony Fauci would be able to tell the population of the United States that they were not allowed to appear in public without wearing a kind of face diaper. Would you have believed it? No, that's some kind of bizarre Orwellian fantasy. But that's where we are now, and the politicization of disease and the invocation of public health as a tool of social control should concern everyone, especially at a time when more traditional forms of social control. I'm thinking of what's going on in Washington. They've arrested something like 400 people who were hanging around the Capitol on January 6th. Now, it's true that there's maybe a few dozen who, sad sacks who would wear horns and pretend that they were part of a militia or something. But the idea that this represented any threat to democracy is, to my mind, preposterous. What is a threat to democracy is the marshaling of the police power of the state to do things like engage in a soft coup against the duly elected president of the United States, which is precisely what the FBI and the intelligence services, aided and abetted by the media, did to President Trump.
Well, what we're seeing here, Roger Kimball, is a complete change about what we're currently called conservatives, but I don't see us wanting to conserve much. I see us wanting to burn down institutions. The FBI has betrayed us. The military, at least its leadership, is an utter disaster. The CDC is a joke that's not funny. And I think what the left did was attempt to leverage our natural conservatism, our support for institutions and traditions, thinking that they could change rules for them, but the status quo would remain in place for us. We would be we wouldn't change. But I think we have.
Yes, well, that's it's a very good point. I remember Friedrich Hayek in The Road to Serfdom. He talks about. He says the one of the main points of that book, he said, is to show how extensive government control leads to a psychological change in the populace, habituating them to what Hayek calls socialism, but we could fill that out, habituating them to a status of dependency. And I think that you are absolutely right to put your finger on these institutions that until very recently had the instinctive support and allegiance of the great swath of the American public. That is to say, the conservative part that was pro-America, pro-patriot, and pro-family, all of that stuff. But what has happened is that to an extent that is frightening to contemplate, and with a rapidity that is frightening to contemplate, these institutions have been hollowed out. And you're quite right. It still looks like the FBI. You can go there and look at the building. You've got all the G-men in there, and I'm sure that many of the rank and file are terrific people.
Are you?
The leadership.
Are you really sure?
I'm not sure.
Who has resigned? Who has said, hell no, I won't be a part of this? I haven't seen that. I'm not sure there are any good apples left. But that's just me. Roger Kimball, editor, New Criterion, thank you very much for that 30,000-foot view. This is the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm Kurt Schlichter. We got another hour coming up. Thank you, Hugh Hewitt. I am Kurt Schlichter, senior columnist at townhall.com, noted Los Angeles trial lawyer, retired United States Army colonel, author of the new best-selling novel, The Split, the sixth in the Kelly Turnbull series of conservative action novels. They've got guns. They've got liberal bashing. They got crocodiles. They got more guns. You're going to love it. You need to go out and get it. The Split. I know Hugh says you're supposed to say it 7 times in a segment, and that sells books. But so I'm down too. But I'd like to sell my next guest book. And it's my friend Michael Walsh, and his book is extremely timely right now. Michael, how are you?
Good morning, Colonel. I am reporting for duty.
Well, tell us about your book, and let's talk about how it relates to what happened on Capitol Hill yesterday.
Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Where did we start, Kurt? Let's start with
the femboys. That's where we're starting.
I was going to say, let's start with the men, but there weren't any up there yet.
Oh, my God. That was embarrassing.
It really was. It was one of the most humiliating things that this country has ever actually witnessed, and half of which celebrated it.
I don't think half. I think even a lot of liberals were like, dude, don't cry. What's wrong with you?
Well, the whole idea of what it means to be a man, obviously, in my new book, Last Stands.
Why Men Fight When All Is Lost.
Correct. Man is the operative word here. And we just seem to be in pretty short supply these days, Kurt. And because the question is what's worth fighting for, and that's something I explore in depth in my own best-selling book here, Last Stands. And yet we don't seem to have we have lost the masculine virtues.
I don't think we have. I think, Michael Walsh, I think they have. I think they got up there and thought if they bit their lips and keep in mind, Kinzinger is a Air Force lieutenant colonel, and he's up there sobbing over, I don't know, a minor fracas. You know, you and I had dinner the other night in beautiful Culver City at a barbecue place. Right in that area, I was on the streets for 3 weeks during the Los Angeles riots. I came home and had a beer like a man. These guys, they were traumatized. And, of course, in Los Angeles, we had about 60 people murdered. On Capitol Hill, we had one unarmed veteran trespasser shot by a cop whose name we don't even know.
Right.
And they're broken men. PTSD. I'm trying to work through the trauma. Oh, jeez.
It's very sad. As you know, Kurt, in Last Stands, I end the book with my own father's experiences at the Chosin Reservoir.
Which is worth, folks, it is worth the price. I got to read it in advance copy, and I was, look, I know the battles, Kenai and Rorke's Drift. Yeah, I get that. That last chapter was incredible, Michael. I mean, it was moving. It was wow.
Well, thank you for that. But when you grow up with that man, I was already born when he went off to Korea, but he came back and fathered 4 more children, my siblings. When you grow up with that ethos, even though he never, ever talked about it, we had vague notion that he was in some Marine Corps action as we were kids growing up in San Diego, California. But that ethos penetrates your upbringing, and it's what it means to be a man is something that men used to pass on to their sons, not to their daughters, to their sons. And you had a culture of masculinity that has been under assault now for how many years? 50, 60, something like that. And what you get from that, you saw on Capitol Hill yesterday. Weeping, hugging, crying. Good Lord, what is this, a mahjong circle? That was just absolutely disgraceful.
Well, the nice thing is, you know, are these lachrymose, moist wimps, are they the ones who are going to come and take our guns and ship us off to camps? I don't think so.
That'd be pretty funny.
And I don't think they represent real America. I think on MSNBC, I think, Rachel Maddow probably, squeed with delight. But I think normal people, even ones kind of liberal, even ones who are like, the Capitol Hill thing, I'm not a real big fan, probably saw that and said, dude, you're embarrassing yourself. Get some dignity.
Yeah. But you know who cheerleads this stuff? It's my own personal bête noire, the New York Times. I get their Twitter instant headline update on my phone all day, and I saw it come across yesterday, and it said something like, in excruciating detail. Excruciating means the agony Jesus felt on the cross. That's what the word derives from.
Yep.
Cruciata, that's the cross. In excruciating detail, the survivors of the Capitol Hill riot.
Survivors!
The trauma.
That would be the survivors.
Yeah, the survivors. Everybody's a survivor of something now, because that gives you victim status, and that gives you dignity and moral superiority.
When the 24th Foot was holding off the multiple impies of Zulu warriors at Rorke's Drift, I suppose Chard and Bromhead and Color Sergeant Bourne were sitting around hugging, sharing their feelings, crying, and inspiring their men through their own being in touch with their feelings. Is that how that worked out?
That's pretty much how they won. I mean, they just sat around and they held hands, and
the Zulus respected their openness.
They totally respected that. They said, "Hey, these guys are tough. We ain't going to mess with them." And then they all went off. You
look back at history when you've got two groups of heroic, masculine men. You got the British colonial forces. You got the Zulu warriors, who were just of all the indigenous population, indigenous warfare. These guys were like the top of the heap.
They were the Spartans.
Unbelievable.
Spartans of Africa.
The Zulus were just, and it was just a real clash of titans. And then you look at these guys. Traumatized, literally shaking because some granny took a selfie in the rotunda.
Right.
It's pathetic.
Well, you're a military man. I grew up in a military culture, and for us, it's just alien. Nobody we
alien.
know would act like that, ever. It would be embarrassing. You'd never show your face in public
Well,
again.
speaking of showing your face, we have been informed that we now must mask again, even though we were told if you vaccinate, you don't have to mask. Now we got to mask again. What is it with this obsession of these badges of serfdom?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I wrote a column in this week's Epoch Times, which is getting a lot of action online, basically saying, take off the slave muzzles and refuse to give up your freedom. This is not about health. It's about your freedom as an American. And that's what they want to. They want this sort of feminized culture we live in, which prizes safety over every conceivable thing and is pushed daily by the Times, by NPR, which we pay for, by the way, and other media organs.
Thank you, establishment GOP.
Oh, yeah, well, they're always, of course, right. They're the first guys up to the front of the line with rifles in their hand, aren't they? Good Lord. No, we're in tough shape. We don't have a culture of masculinity. It's been beaten out of us. And I think the fact that your fellow citizens are walking around with slave muzzles on, joyfully, by the way, and look at you askance as if you're some kind of serial killer radiating,
I had some hefty lady pull up, yell out the window, "Wear a mask!" And all I could say is, "Hey, stand back! I don't want diabetes." Look, by the way, my wife. I'm not going to say because I want to be FCC compliant what my wife told her, but it was not pleasant. I'm not as pessimistic as you. I think there is a culture of masculinity out there. I just don't think we see it because it doesn't get covered. And you and I live in kind of bluish areas, so we see a lot of beaten down, feminized men enthralled to their Chardonnay swilling liberal wives who walk around with Kendi's books and lattes.
Basically, right. But let me just say this. As you know, I'm on an 8,000-mile trip in and around the United States in my car. Okay, I just decided to do this.
Like Selena Zito.
Well, Selena's a great reporter.
Isn't she? You are a real reporter, too, so you must be loving what's going on now with the media.
Well, I was once upon a time, but what I wanted to do was see the country, really, this is probably the last time I'll ever pull a stunt like this. It's taken me a month and a half, and I'm only halfway through it. So what I see is a real country, and then the occupied areas on the coast that are insane. They are literally crazy. They're talking about trauma and crying and hugging it out. And
I think they actually enjoy this mask stuff. Michael Walsh, author of Last Dance, can you stay in our segment with me? Because I think we got more to probe.
I think we certainly can arrange that. Yes, sir.
Excellent. Michael Walsh will be joining me again. He is the author of Last Stands, Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. I highly recommend it. I have bought this book for people in my life, including my dad, who's a retired naval officer, and he has greatly enjoyed it. I want you to stick around. We got a lot more to talk about here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. See you in a couple minutes. We are back on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. This is guest host Kurt Schlichter. That bumper music is literally the only classical music I know. And I had to play it for my friend Michael Walsh, who is, of course, among the many things you're an expert on, is classical music. You're also an expert on human nature. And I was wondering, why do you think people are so eager to submit to gross indignities like masks?
Well, let me just say before we get to that, you just reminded me of one of my favorite quotes about my own personal hero, Ulysses S. Grant, who was notoriously unmusical. And he once said, "I only know two tunes. One is Yankee Doodle and the other one isn't." The Ride of the Valkyries from Act 3, the opening of Act 3 of Wagner's second opera in the Ring Cycle, the Valkyrie, it's called. I thought it was great. Why do people want to put on masks? I think they enjoy being slaves. I think slavery, which is a word that's become so corrupted and freighted now by racial elements. Slavery goes back to the Roman period, it goes back to the Greeks. Everybody enslaved everybody. If you lost, you got enslaved. It's a normal human condition. And what was remarkable about Western European culture was that it got rid of slavery. This is the only culture that ever did. And yet there seems to be some aspect of the human creature that feels comfortable in conformity. And that's why I'm so opposed to the masks myself, because it's just a visible sign of your conformity. And I just have one other thing to say. As you know, it's not original thought with me, but the United States hasn't won a war since we changed the name of the War Department to the Defense Department. And I think that was a very telling change because, as you know, if you're on defense, you're losing. That's the point. You're losing, right? The bad guys are coming over the parapets. We no longer go on offense because it's rude to do that. We no longer want to win. We want to act proportionately. This is an insane delusion that is purely suicidal. And masks have exercised me because it just seems to me to be our fellow citizens saying, I am content to be a slave. And why won't you do it? And, you know, they're very aggressive about it when you're not wearing a mask, too. It's just a derangement that has got to be stopped if this culture is to continue. There is nothing to fear from COVID-19. It doesn't kill anybody, basically, except people who are very elderly. Listen, I'm over 70, so I should be worried. I'm not. It kills people with comorbidities. Most of the time you don't even know it. Yes, is it unpleasant? I'm sure it's unpleasant.
It is.
I had it, in fact. I think I had it right at the beginning. But it's not worth destroying a civilization over. Nothing is worth doing that. And I said last night in my column on the Epoch Times yesterday, do you want to live forever or do you want your country to live forever? That's your choice here. Stop this nonsense.
Well,
my speech.
Michael Walsh, author of Last Stands, Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. Let me, here's an observation. I think that hard, tough men made Western civilization and America in particular.
Yes.
And they were too successful. These hard men made a country where you could afford to grow up and be soft. And I think that's what happened.
I think so, too. But remember, Kurt, this is just a cycle. The Spartans were as tough as they came, and eventually they lost, and they were defeated. And the Romans learned how to defeat the Greek phalanxes, and the Athenians beat them to become supreme in the Greek territories. It just seems that you have hard men who create a country that their wives and children can grow up in safely, and they become weak. And what happens is they attract the attention of other hard men who want to conquer them. Conquest is the nature of the human animal, and that's the point of Last Stands. Is this goes on forever. So we're in a cycle now where we're on the losing end of this particular cultural shift, and I don't know how we get it back. But I will say one more quick thing. In my drive across the country, I didn't see racism. I saw black people and white people interacting perfectly comfortably, polite, friendly. Not the world the New York Times says is out there.
Well, that's because you were visiting America. Michael Walsh, author of Last Stands, Why Men Fight When All Is Lost. I highly recommend it, and I highly recommend you stick around on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. We got a lot more to come.